Hey everyone, I'm Amy Connell. Thanks for tuning in to Lessons to My Teenage Self. This is the shortcut you need to thrive in your physical, mental, and spiritual health. As a personal trainer and nutrition coach, I'm passionate about empowering you to find your best version of health. Each week, we dig into one topic I wish I'd known as a teen. When I was in, I think it was seventh grade, there was this girl who I really like. I knew who she was, and that was it. And she decided she did not like me. I do not remember doing anything to provoke this. Like, I don't know why she didn't like me. In hindsight, I think it's because we had developed a mutual friend and there was a bit of a power struggle, and she didn't like me because I was really tight with this girl who she was new friends with. I don't know. She just bullied me. Like, I remember she would step in front of me and walk in front of me in the halls during passing period. And then she would just stop, like she would stop short and I would run into her. And then of course she would say it was my fault. She would just physically pick on me. I wish I could remember more about this, but I remember, like, I get along with most people. And I remember being so confused as to why this girl so very clearly did not like me. And I also got angry about it. And this is something that I do not recommend doing, and I am not proud of doing, but I remember being in the halls and she was in front of me and I was so angry. I was so angry at her, and I kicked the air behind her. I knew I would not kick her. Okay. So I was not trying to kick her, but I had a lot of anger. And so I kicked her. Well, I guess she felt the air, or she felt my movement or something. I don't know. And she turned around and she grabbed my arm. She twisted my arm and threatened me. And of course I'm in tears. And again, don't recommend that. Please don't do that. But she was just a bully. I mean, clearly she was a bully, and this is not okay. I think now I have the language for that. I didn't when I was in seventh grade, and we didn't really talk as much about bullying. You know, there are a lot of different ways that we can recognize a bully in our life. So maybe that's name calling. Maybe it is saying things about you that aren't true. Maybe now it's posting mean comments on social media about you, or undermining friendships or relationships. I think that's kind of what category this one fell into. Sometimes it's using threats to instill fear or to make someone fearful of you. Nowadays, thanks to the movie, this is also called a mean girl. And rightfully so, these girls are mean and bullies. And definitely, if this is a situation that you're in, then, find a trusted adult to help you navigate that. I have also had a bully in my life for much longer than just my middle school years. This bully did things like told me that my body was not good enough. This bully said things like, well, you need to be a certain size or be a certain way in order to be liked. This bully would shame me for eating foods that she was like, those are not good foods. That's a bad food. You should not be eating that, and shame on you for eating that. And this bully has also said, you know what, if you had a different size, you would have a better relationship. Like this would help a relationship. Now, I don't remember this bully's name from seventh grade. I've tried and I just don't remember. But I do know this other bully who has been around for a long time. I call her Inner Mean Girl. She's the voice living inside of me who says all of these things to me. Inner Mean Girls are perhaps one of the worst relationships that we can have because they're ongoing and they take up so much space in our brains, and they go against what God says about us and how God created us to be. I love this verse from Ephesians 2:10. It says, "For we are God's handiwork." This is the NIV version. "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." I want to hone in on one word, and that is the word handiwork. So as you know, the New Testament, or as you may know, the New Testament was written in Greek. And so sometimes there's not like literal translations, and that's why we have different translations in the Bible, because they've been translated differently. So when I look up what that Greek word means in the various translations in the English Bibles that we have. That is also, we are God's workmanship. We are God's making. We are what God has made us what we are. We are God's accomplishment. We are God's masterpiece. We are God's creation. The inner mean girl says nothing like that. Nothing that the inner mean girl says supports these words that God says about us. And unfortunately, the more inner mean girl comes around, the easier it is for her to stay around and to continue coming. I don't know if you've ever been on a trail. I love hiking. I love being in the woods. And sometimes there are kind of man-made trails, and then sometimes there are more organic ones. So they are trails that people have clearly like walked across, and then more people have, and more people have. So when people create these trails, the more we walk across the trail, the easier it is to go through. The first person to make that trail, which wasn't even a trail, it was just a bunch of bush or trees or whatever, like that was pretty hard. But then once more people went across it, it's easier to go through. And then pretty soon someone like me comes along and I'm like, oh great, here's a trail. And I don't really think twice that some people, like there were a lot of people before me who had to go across that to make it an easy trail. Our brain works like those trails. When we think certain things and when we allow our inner mean girl to take control and say all those horrible bullying things to us, then we start making that trail easier for her to come on. That's why we have to have control over inner mean girl. Now, of course, if this is something that you really struggle with, a counselor or a therapist would be a wonderful place to start if that's accessible to you. But if not, I have some tools that I can give you. And now I'm going to tell you right now, these are super simple and they're a lot easier said than done. However, they can be very effective. And in my journey, in my experience in reestablishing a positive relationship with my body and not saying all of those inner mean girl things to myself, this has really helped. So this is kind of a 3-step process. Number 1 is spot it. You have to recognize when inner mean girl comes around. You have to recognize when she starts saying things that are not consistent with what God says about us. So that's the first thing. Just spot it. Then step 2, lock it. The verse that I love that goes along with this is from 2 Corinthians 10:5, and that says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive, we lock it up, every thought to make it obedient to Christ. If the inner mean girl is not saying things that are consistent with God's word, then we have to lock it up. We have to take it captive to make it obedient to Christ. So step 2, lock it. Take your thought captive and imagine throwing it in a prison cell. There's a lot of power in visualizing things. And imagine taking her, give her a face if you need to, give her a name, make her that you don't really like her. Okay. But imagine throwing her into a prison cell. And then finally, speak it. So spot it, lock it, speak it. Speak it is have a positive phrase ready that you can speak back to yourself. So after she's gone, after you've locked her up, then speak something positive back to yourself. Now, of course, because of my example, I'll just stick with body image stuff, but this can be anything. You can apply this to grades. You can apply this to your latest phone. I mean, whatever this is. Okay. And I'll let you I'm going to tell you my positive phrase. And this is something I still employ. Okay. This is something I still have to tell myself sometimes. I'm taking care of myself so I can do what I'm called to do. And we will talk about this, about taking care of ourselves in a different episode. So you can borrow that if you want, or you can make up your own. Mine, again, is I'm taking care of myself so I can do what God calls me to do. Here's some others that you can play around with. God created my original body with and for an original purpose. If I was like her, I wouldn't be me. And I like me. So do other people. Her outside doesn't tell the story on the inside. Or maybe it's her path is not my path. and God knows where I'm going. So here's a litmus test. If you're trying to think about, okay, is it an inner mean girl, or am I just telling myself that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing? If it's not something that you would say to a friend, let's just say a medium friend, like this doesn't even have to be your best friend, but if this is not something that you would say to your friend, then it is not something that you should be saying to yourself. It is not something that should be allowed in your head, and that is an inner mean girl thought. Your inner mean girl has the potential to say worse things than that 7th grade bully ever said to me or ever did to me. And because she can so easily take up residence in your brain and in your heart, she can stick around a lot longer, just like she did for me. The good news is you can stop her now. You can spot her, you can lock her, and you can speak truth over the things that she says to you. So what's my lesson to my teenage self? The words you say to yourself are more harmful than anything anyone else could say to you. Stop the inner mean girl. Hey, if this episode was helpful to you, I would love it, and it would mean so much if you would share it with your friend, or if you could leave a rating and review. This is a relatively new podcast, and so that is super helpful, so other people know that, like, okay, this is going to be helpful to me as well. So if you could either share this with a friend or leave a rating and review, especially on Apple Podcasts, I would appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button and make sure that you subscribe to Lessons to My Teenage Self. That's all for today. Take today's lesson and go out there and live the life God has for you and your amazing original body.